All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a pretty wild theory from our source material. The core idea that the reality we all think we're living in might not be real at all. It's a massive claim, so let's break it down piece by piece and see what this is all about.
So right out of the gate, the source material just drops this bombshell. And they don't mean that figuratively. The argument here is that our actual, lived reality has been systematically replaced. But how could that even happen?
Well, the thinking is it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, built up through 6 distinct layers, one on top of the other. And each layer supposedly takes us one step further away from real, direct experience. So, let's start peeling them back.
And here we are at the very first layer. This is the foundation for everything else. According to the source, this is the fundamental switch, the moment we moved from living through reality to experiencing symbols of reality.
So look at this distinction, because it's the whole key. Direct experience is, you're actually living through an event. You're there. Mediated reality is experiencing the coverage of it, the headline, the tweet, the analysis somebody else already prepared for you. The theory is we're now living almost entirely in that symbolic layer.
And this is the really critical fallout from that shift. Because if symbols and stories become more real to us than reality itself, well then objective truth kind of becomes optional, doesn't it? What really matters is just that an idea gets repeated over and over, that it's easy to recognize, and that your group reinforces it.
And wow, this example just hits it home perfectly. The source points to the original meaning of the word brand. It literally meant to burn a permanent mark into livestock, for ownership and for easy sorting. The argument is that today, narratives and political labels are doing the exact same thing to us, branding us so we can be sorted into easy-to-manage groups.
So that brings us to layer 2, which builds right on top of the first. If the world is now symbolic, the next logical step is to shape how people behave in it. And this is what the source calls the conditioning machine. It's all about how we're being programmed.
And the tools for this programming, they're called conditioning signals. Just think about it. Likes, shares, retweets, view counts, all those little signs of approval. The idea is so simple, it's brilliant. Whatever gets rewarded gets repeated. Whatever gets ignored just fades away. It's a feedback loop that trains us every single day.
And apparently, this leads to a pretty predictable 4-step process. First, we start to simplify ourselves, flatten our personalities into something easy to share and like. Then, that performance starts to take over, and we care more about how something will be received than how we actually feel. And over time, this creates a huge gap between the person we're performing as and the person we actually are. The end result, the source claims, is this deep feeling of hollowness, a death of authenticity.
And a huge part of this conditioning machine is the fuel it runs on. The source makes this super important distinction. We've moved away from consuming information, stuff that actually answers questions and helps you understand things. Instead, we're fed a constant stream of content, which is designed to do one thing and one thing only: stimulate a response and keep your attention glued to the screen.
Okay, so this leads us right to layer 3, winning the narrative war. Once you've got a population that's conditioned to react to symbols and content, what's next? Well, according to this theory, the next step is to control the big stories, the narratives themselves. This section is all about the so-called weapons of mass manipulation.
So the big question is, how does this actually work in practice? How does a simple story get turned into a tool for control?
This table from the source just lays out the shift perfectly. The goal isn't understanding anymore. It's just getting a reaction. And how do you do that? You ditch the messy facts and nuance, and you replace them with simple stories of heroes and villains. The result isn't a population that's informed, it's an audience that's been segmented and is ready to react on cue.
And what's the most powerful emotion for getting that reaction? According to the source, it's fear, by a long shot. Fear gets more clicks, more shares, more engagement than anything else. It makes us react without thinking, it wipes out any sense of nuance, and it burns itself into our memory. It's basically the perfect fuel for this whole machine.
The source then makes this really bold claim about politics. It argues that the whole left versus right conflict isn't really about ideology anymore. It's about marketing. It's about audience segmentation. You create two simple, opposing tribes that have predictable reactions, and you keep them fighting each other so they never look up and question the game itself.
Now, the source actually details a few more layers, but in the interest of getting to the heart of it, we're going to jump ahead to what it calls the final, all-encompassing layer of this system. This is where it all comes together, but it's also where the theory suggests there might be a way out.
This sixth and final layer is what the source calls political theater. And I mean, this quote on the slide just says it all, doesn't it? The argument is that politics has stopped being a way to govern or solve problems. It's become a performance, a show designed to keep us all captivated. In this political theater has all the elements of a play. You've got the roles, the costumes, the predictable fights. You see these dramatic hearings where nothing actually happens, or these passionate speeches that don't change a single law. The source argues the real goal isn't to make progress. It's just to maintain engagement. It's about keeping you watching the show.
So, what's the way out? How do you escape all this? The source proposes a surprisingly simple answer. Awareness. That's it. The claim is that you don't even have to fight the system. You just have to see it. Once you recognize the machinery, the conditioning, the narratives, the theater, it just stops working on you. It loses its power.
And that leaves us with one last big question. The source says that seeing the simulation, becoming aware of it, is the key to breaking free. But that also leads to a deeper thought, doesn't it? If becoming aware of the machinery is the first step, then what in the world is the second?